Hi, I'm Robben Ford, and I'm here at the Woodshed Guitar Experience, Lake Francis, Tennessee, with AmericanMusical.com. I started playing guitar age 13. My father played, and there was a guitar at the house, and I picked it up and just started fooling around with it. He showed me my first chords. Suddenly one day, a friend of mine said, "Hey man, we're going to start a band. You want to join a band?" I said, "Sure." You know, this is the 60s, and it's, there's some surf music, hangover, but the British invasion has happened, so, we're playing Satisfaction, Rolling Stone songs, Beatles, as best we could. So the guitar wasn't really a thing to me at that time, and in fact, I went on to play the bass a couple of years later, because I always liked bass. For some reason, I dug listening to bass. But I heard Mike Bloomfield, and the great Chicago blues guitar player with the Paul Butterfield Blues Band. And that really kind of set a direction for me. I wanted to be Mike Bloomfield. I just thought he was the coolest dude and the greatest guitar player. And he probably was at the time. So I started basically emulating him, just trying to pick up his licks off of records. The blues it's ground zero for me as a guitar player, for sure. It was where I started, really playing the guitar. I've always loved melodies. I like what happens, with melodies and chords, like you can play a melody and you can actually harmonize it in a different way and get a whole different feeling from it. Same three notes, you can harmonize many ways, and whoa, they feel totally different. So I was always affected by that, texture, things like that. I wanted to be a jazz guitar player. I was a blues guitar player, but I loved jazz. Okay, I'm a guitar player, and I realized one day that I didn't know any chords. So I got a book, and I learned all of the jazz chord voicings. And then I knew those voicings, but I was still just playing the blues over them. So I got another book, and I learned the scales that run through these chords. So now, okay, I know what the right notes are to play on that chord, And I applied myself to them in the same way that I had the pentatonic scale in the blues. The pentatonic scale is pretty easy to learn, and you can just hit those notes. No matter how you get them, just hit them. And that's how I learned how to play the guitar. It was just, okay, don't play a wrong note. Just play those 5 notes, everywhere, so to speak, And you just pour yourself into it, wear it out, So that's the way I learned how to play the guitar. And it's the same, any scale that I ever learned, I didn't know how to use it any more than anybody else did, except just use that. Don't play any other notes. So that's how I learned how to play the guitar and bring those, sophisticated things into my blues playing and still have them sound like blues guitar. It still sounds like blues guitar. Tone, of course, is very important. Your amp and your guitar, very important to that too. Yeah, the music kind of dictates the instrument, I would say. I was a blues guitar player who wanted to be a jazz guitar player. So I got first an L5, and then I traded it plus cash for a Super 400. When I was invited to join LA Express and Joni Mitchell and do that tour, the Super 4 was clearly not the right instrument for it. It just wasn't. So all of this, there was a real period of several years for me of just stumbling around from amp to guitar to amp, and it had come so easily in the beginning. I just had jazz guitar, Fender Bassman, plug in, play. And this went on for some time until, I would say mid-70s, till 82. I was going through this struggle. And then I found the Dumble, Alexander Dumble's Overdrive Special, and I've been playing that amplifier ever since, and it's been Every record I've made up until the last two, over a 30-year period, was made on that same amplifier, that same cabinet. And it's become a part of me like no other instrument. With the guitars, somewhere along the way I bought a 1960 Telecaster, and I started moving towards the Les Paul. So for me, fundamentals are Fender Telecaster and Gibson Les Paul, but they're vintage, you know. Guitar is a rough gig. It's a rough gig. Guitar amplifier pairings, you know, and what you think or know is, you know, you're comfortable with. It changes, like, it's okay, move on, you know, try it, you know. But I have come to the point where it's just like, I can play pretty much any instrument as long as it's vintage. If it's new, I'm gonna have a hard time with it. Miles Davis was, and still is, I would say, I think I could safely say my greatest musical influence. You know, Miles just kept changing things. He just kept pushing things, you know. He's sort of a mystical being, you know, and anybody who certainly worked with him would say the same. You can't really say why. I mean, his tone, of course, his melodicism, very important, of course. But his constantly pushing and trying to get things to, you know, move even further forward. The guy who produced the Yellow Jackets, Tommy LaPuma, was producing Miles's first album for Warner Brothers when Miles moved from Columbia. Miles was looking for a guitar player, and Tommy LaPuma said, well, I know this guy in California. You know, I was told Miles was going to call me, you know. 3 days went by. I'm thinking every day Miles is going to call me. And so it's like anytime the phone rings, I'm jittery. You know, by the third day, I'd forgotten about it, and it was him. And I just said, Robben, what you doing out there? And I'm like, oh, nothing. You want to play with me? You go, yeah. Okay, here's Jim. And he puts on his tour manager, and 10 days later, I was on a red-eye flight to Washington, D.C. to play my first show with Miles. No rehearsal, didn't make sound check either because I'd gotten in so late, I had to sleep. So I slept through sound check. I met the entire band in the lobby of the hotel on my way to the gig to meet Miles. So it was the most terrifying experience of my entire life. I was scared to death, sick, nauseous, laying down in the back seat of the van from fear. And I met him, you know, about 20 minutes before we went on the bandstand. Went out there, again, scared to death. And first piece of music is You're Under Arrest, and it's at tempo de terrace, as a friend of mine used to say. Super fast tempo, you know, complicated line, you know. And I'm just head down. And I played every note I knew on my first solo, head down once again. And then I just look up. And he's about 6 feet away from me, looking at me. He goes, damn. So he was happy. And so that was my first night with him. And I had a talking to myself the next day. You know, just like, look, man, you have to calm down. Miles didn't want you to be freaked out. He wanted you to stand up for yourself and be yourself. And he would always challenge you. You know, he'd just do something to you. He's always like poking you, you know. But it was just to get a reaction. So I figured that out. And consequently, you know, I had a really good relationship with him. And when I left, he said, you know, if you want to come back, just come back. Over the last 18 months, I've spent a lot more time at home, as most musicians have. Things that I was doing, living in Nashville, which I've been there almost 4 years now, the things that I had been doing there were shut down, you know, which was a certain amount of live performance and producing. I had started producing, and that's why I moved to Nashville, was to produce records. That's really why I wanted to be there. And it started happening, and it was great. And then everything shut down, went away. I thought, I'll produce my own record. And consequently, I started working on my new album, which is called Pure. And it actually drops tomorrow, August 27th. It'll be released. And I had already opened up the Robben Ford Guitar Dojo channel on the TrueFire platform. And I supplied all of the content, paid for all of the content, and they supplied the platform. But after a while, we just felt we could do it on our own, and closed the TrueFire channel and opened RobbenFordGuitarDojo.com. I had the time to do all of this, I mean, there was nothing else to do, really. So I was shooting a lot of video at home and occasionally in some studios, and so we have behind the scenes, making a record with Bill Evans, Daryl Jones, and Keith Carlock, which I hope is released fairly soon. Started producing John Jorgensen, got shut down. Started producing Paul Franklin, the great steel player, got shut down. So okay, I spent my time writing and recording my own music, producing my own record, and developing RobbenFordGuitarDojo.com. This is what I want to do more than anything at this point in my career. Love to just produce records. I really am not enamored with being on the road. I don't enjoy it as much as I might have at one time. And I like writing, producing, being in the studio, and teaching has become, a really very enjoyable, rewarding part of my life.